Well, we're back in lesson 1.27, and we're going to look in particular at the last two sections once again, because they really raise a very important point. Is that if you want to do more than just go through the motions, if you want to do more than, as they say in sporting terminology, just mailing it in, you really want to learn to speak this language that you ostensibly are learning. If that's your goal, there's some things that you can do to develop your fluency that I highly encourage you to do. And I want to talk about those things that you can do once again in the course of today's video. On the contrary, if you're just going through the motions to try and get a grade or satisfy a requirement, I highly doubt you're going to do these things that I'm going to suggest to you. So I'm not really speaking to you if that's the case with you. For those of you who are motivated to actually learn to speak this language, to speak the French language, the last two sections raise the issue of how is it you can simulate conversation. You don't actually have me present with you in the room where you are, or even online in some fashion, speaking in a live manner one with another. And so how can you simulate conversation and develop both speaking and listening skills? First of all, what you want to do with this particular section, which is the next to last section, you want to be developing the ability to form a question. And you're going to do that out loud. Very important that you speak out loud when you talk about yourself in the last section, or when you ask these questions in this current section. Because as you speak out loud, you can hear your pronunciation, you can hear what sounds authentic and what does not, and you're also working the muscles in your face that are going to be necessary in order to speak the language as authentically as possible. So make sure you're speaking out loud. Then this next to last section here, it's important that you be able to form a question with ease, because it helps you be more than a passive participant in a conversation. A passive conversationalist is one who waits for the other person to initiate conversation and who only can respond to questions asked of him or her. Therefore, almost invariably, that person is speaking about themselves. That's not a good way to develop a relationship with people, obviously. And so the ability to form questions is critical, and that's what you're doing in the course of this section here. And now let's move on to the last section, and this is where I really like to focus. It's on that whole issue of, like I just mentioned, expanding upon your responses, not doing just the minimum, but giving a lengthy response where you maybe digress a little bit from the initial question, or you just provide more information that really even is asked for. The key is that you just speak as much as you can. You do it out loud. I'll give you some examples right now. So we're looking at the third question here, which is, est-ce que tu fais beaucoup de devoirs? You very easily could just say, oui, je fais beaucoup de devoirs, or non, je ne fais pas beaucoup de devoirs, and you could be done, period. However, that's not going to develop your fluency as you really need it to do. And so be creative. Imagine how you could give more information to this person. And you're going to need to use that creativity also when there are things you'd like to say, you just don't know yet how to say them. This idea of speaking around the gaps in your knowledge. So let me give you some examples right now. The question was, est-ce que tu fais beaucoup de devoirs? Oui, je fais beaucoup de devoirs. Now you don't know how to say teacher, and so you could simply say il or elle. You could say à l'école, il or elle, depending upon your teacher being a male or female, donne beaucoup de devoirs. And I'll start to digress and tell about the things you really like to do, and that homework's getting in your way, so you can't do these things. So say like, j'aime regarder la télé. J'aime écouter de la musique. J'aime parler avec la famille. And now you wish you could say however or but, like mais, however, but unfortunately you don't have vocabulary yet. And so just keep pressing on. Just ignore those things that you don't know how to say, and say j'ai beaucoup de devoirs et je n'aime pas l'école. There were about 6 different statements you gave as opposed to the one simple one you could have said. Let's go on to the next section here. Here it's est-ce que tu écoutes de la musique? And so you could, of course, simply say oui, which is the worst answer, the weakest answer, oui, or non. That's not going to develop your fluency one iota. Or you could say even the minimum response, oui, j'écoute de la musique. or non, je n'écoute pas de la musique. But why not wax eloquent? Here we go. As eloquent as you can be at this point. Oui, j'aime la musique, j'écoute de la musique, j'écoute la radio, j'écoute de la musique rock, je n'aime pas la musique classique. And off the top of my head, that's all I'm going to say. I can think of to say right now. But that was about 5 or 6 different statements as opposed to the one I could have given. Here's a couple more here. This question is, laves-tu le linge? And you could say, non, je ne lave pas le linge. Maman lave le linge. Ou bien, papa lave le linge. Je fais les devoirs. Je ne lave pas le linge. Well, there are about 4 sentences there. And you're getting across the idea, hey, look, I've got my job. It's doing my schoolwork. Mom or dad, they have their job. They take care of the laundry. And so that's what you're basically saying in that response right there. And most importantly, you're speaking at length and you're doing it out loud. One more example. This question here is, est-ce que tu dis bonjour? What kind of a strange, est-ce que tu dis merci? What kind of a strange question is that? Do you say thank you? But go with it. Use it. It's a tool to develop your fluency. And so think of situations in which you say thank you. Of course, you could just say, oui. That's pitiful. Or, oui, je dis merci. And that's still weak. Or of course, non, je ne dis pas merci. That's also minable. It's also pitiful. So go for it. Here we go. I'm assuming you're not in a hurry, that you've got some time to develop your fluency. So say, oui, je dis merci. Maman lave. You wish you could say, quand maman lave le linge. When mom washes the laundry. But you don't know the word when yet. And so, and that leads to another point. As you're trying to go from point A to point B and you lack vocabulary to go directly to the statement you'd like to make, and you have to go through point C to get to point B, and you have to multiply 3 or 4 sentences to get across the idea that a fluent speaker could get across in a single sentence. What's going to happen when you're in another country and you're doing the same thing and you're struggling to learn new vocabulary, as you're explaining yourself at great length, when you finally get back to point B, your listener, who's a fluent speaker, a native speaker, will have understood what you wanted to say, and they say, "Oh, you mean," and they'll fill you in on the vocabulary word you're missing, the expression maybe you're missing. They'll restate it for you. That's how you pick up so much vocabulary and how you develop your fluency when you get to another country. So this skill of learning to talk around the gaps in your knowledge is an important one to develop now to perform the tasks you must perform as far as the ULET's concerned, but even more important, to enhance your vocabulary once you get to the French-speaking country where you're going to be located, if you're going to be located in a French-speaking country. A perfect example for me was I have a great deal of difficulty talking about anything of a mechanical nature, especially the automobile. Parts of a car, function of a car, I can't talk about it in English, much less trying to talk about it in France. And so when I would take our car, a Peugeot 305, I would take it to the mechanic. That was one of the most frightening experiences for me because I knew I was going to be humiliated. Fortunately, I wasn't humiliated because the guy was very compassionate. God bless Monsieur Le Saffre. He was a good man. And he would listen to me. He'd listen to me trying to explain about those 2 little posts on the top of the battery. And he'd say, "Oh, les cosses." And that's how I picked up the word for whatever those things are called in English, to which you attach the cables on the top of your battery. Les cosses. And he would fill me in on the vocabulary that I lacked. And so in any case, this task of speaking at length to try and get your ideas across, very important skill to develop. So here we are. Do you say thank you? I'm talking about, when my mother does the laundry, ma mère fait maman fait le linge, lave le linge, je dis merci. Maman lave la vaisselle, je dis merci. Maman prépare le dîner, je dis merci. Maman dit fais les devoirs, je ne dis pas merci. Now you want to get across the idea that when mom gives me a ride to school, I thank her for it. Okay? How do you say a ride? You don't need to say it yet. Someone else will fill you in. Maman va. I'm only using words you know at this point. I hope you're catching that. Maman va à l'école. Elle prend la voiture. Je vais à l'école. Je vais à l'école en voiture, dans la voiture, avec maman. J'arrive à l'école. Je dis merci, maman. Now that's not the most eloquent, certainly not the most efficient way in which to express that idea, but you're developing your fluency, you're becoming more accustomed, more relaxed, more at ease about speaking the language, and it's going to be a skill which will help you to extend your vocabulary once you get to the French-speaking country someday where I hope you will be. Okay, so those are the activities in the last two sections of lesson 1.27. What I'm getting across is, if you really have a heart to learn this language, go beyond the minimum. First, learn to develop questions so you can be a two-sided conversationalist, not just the recipient of questions, but also the one who asks for information. And even throw in a couple questions for the one that's required of you in the ULAT. Think of other questions that are related you could ask and verbalize them out loud. And then secondly, extend your responses to the questions that ULAT provides. And again, speak out loud as you do that. And don't give up easily. If you don't want to say, Mom gives me a ride to school, well, don't say that. Say things you do know how to say to get back to that idea eventually. Well, that's it. I'll see you in the course of lesson 1.28. You're now free to go to the last two sections of 127. Au revoir et puis à bientôt les jeunes. Et les adultes aussi.